Welcome back, friends. As in the previous video we discussed about the conduction system of the heart, and I had told you that in the next lecture I will be discussing about the coronary circulation or the blood supply of the heart. We can also call it the blood supply of the heart. Now let's focus on the coronary circulation. Coronary arteries, or we can also label it as blood supply of myocardium or heart. So we can call it as coronary arteries, as blood supply of the heart, and as coronary circulation also. Clear? Now let's define this circulation. That, friends, for example, I'm making a very simple diagram. If this is our heart, these are atria and these are both the ventricles. So all these atria, both of these atria and both of these ventricles are surrounded by, look carefully, they are surrounded by covering of arteries, and these arteries are responsible to provide oxygenated blood to this myocardium. So we call these as coronary arteries. What are coronary arteries? These are the protective ring of blood vessels around the myocardium, right? So coronary arteries could be defined as these are the protective coverings of arteries, right, that surround the myocardium for what? And supply it with oxygenated blood, right? What are coronary arteries? Coronary arteries, this is the definition of coronary arteries, that these are the protective ring. Instead of covering, we can also write as ring. Protective ring of arteries that surround the myocardium, right? Why are they here? To provide the myocardium with the oxygenated blood. So one of the important function of the coronary arteries is that these arteries are responsible to provide the myocardium, these muscles of the heart, with oxygenated blood, right? This was the definition. Now how many coronary arteries does our heart has? So our heart has 2 coronary arteries, 2, right? And where do these arteries arise? What is their origin? So these coronary arteries arise at the root of aorta, right? These coronary arteries, now look carefully, friends. If here I remove this part of the atria, and from here, from this ventricle, here is the semilunar valve, and this is our aorta, right? So this part is the base, the root of the aorta, and coronary arteries arise from this part of the aorta. So this part of the aorta is called the root of aorta, right? So the origin of coronary arteries begin at the root of aorta. Clear, friends? Okay, now look carefully. Let me make the aorta here, and I will cut and open the aorta, and we will see the exact origin of the coronary arteries, that from which part of the aorta these coronary arteries arise. For example, friends, if this is the tube and we know that this tube is our aorta, right? And this aorta at the beginning has valves, and these valves are called the semilunar valves, or this one is called the aortic valve, right? Okay, so let's label them as, this part is this empty part is the aortic sinus, right? And this flap of this valve is called the lunule. Lunule means small moon. Luna means moon, right? And this part, these are the nodules or nodes, right? So let me cut and open this aorta here. Look carefully, friends. I have opened that aorta in this manner. Clear? We have cut the aorta, and for example, if this is the tube, now we are making a section here, and we will extend one part here and the other part here, so that we could see inside of the aorta, right? So look carefully. Here is these flaps of the valves, right? Okay. Clear? So these are our aortic sinuses. Look, I have written here aortic sinus, this part. So these are the aortic sinuses. This is aortic sinus, right? And this one is the lunule. So these are the lunules. Clear? So look carefully, from which part the coronary arteries arise. Friends, this one, if I cut it here and I remove this lunule from here, so I could see there is a small hole, and this hole, from this hole, the coronary arteries arise, right? This is our coronary artery, this is left coronary artery. From where it has been arised? It has been arised from this part, right? And from right coronary artery, this is the origin for the right coronary artery, right? So let's name it. From where the left coronary artery arises? It arises from left aortic sinus, isn't it? Look here. This is aortic sinus, and it is present on the left side. So this is the left aortic sinus. So left coronary artery arises from left aortic sinus, right? This is the left coronary artery. I hope it is clear, right? So left coronary artery arises from the left aortic sinus. And friends, this is our right aortic sinus. So right coronary artery arises from the right aortic sinus. Clear? So this was about the origin, that from where and the root of aorta, from which exact parts the coronary arteries arise. So right one arises from the right aortic sinus, and left coronary artery arises from the left aortic sinus. And this one is not having any hole, any opening, so this doesn't have any artery or something else. Clear? This was about the origin. Now let me say something about the innervation of these arteries. Innervation, that these arteries sometimes when there is more requirement of the blood, these arteries could be compressed or these arteries could be relaxed, and this is all provided by special nerves, right? So the coronary arteries is provided by sympathetic fibers, and they also receive parasympathetic fibers. Right? Parasympathetic activity. So parasympathetic activity is provided by vagus nerve. Right? Parasympathetic activity to these arteries, to these coronary arteries, are provided by vagus nerve, and sympathetic activity is provided by superior, middle, and inferior cervical ganglion. Right? So this sympathetic innervation is provided by superior, middle, and inferior cervical ganglion, and this parasympathetic innervation is provided by vagus nerve to coronary arteries. Okay, I hope it is clear. Now let's move towards some dimensions of these arteries. Let's explain the lengths and the diameters. Right? So let me explain some dimensions so that it will be more easy for us to learn more about the coronary arteries. About the right coronary artery, RCA, right coronary artery, its length is about 12 to 14 centimeter. 12 to 14 centimeter. And its diameter is, the diameter of right coronary artery is from 10 to 13 millimeter. Clear? From 10 to 13 millimeter. And then about the LCA, left coronary artery, its length is about 13 centimeters. Yes, its length is about 10 to, or I can say 13 centimeters, and its diameter is about 12.8 millimeter. Right? These were the dimensions of the right and left coronary arteries. So this was something a little bit about the origin, about the innervation, and about the dimensions of the coronary arteries. Now in the next lecture, I will discuss and I will show all these coronary arteries that are moving on the surface of the heart on the right side and on the left side, and the regions that these arteries provide oxygenated blood. Be with us.